The Eagles are coming off one of the most dominant seasons ever, but the question is, can they do it again? Today we'll talk about one free agent who could really help this defense and apparently could be honing in on signing with Philly. Also, we'll talk about one player who is looking to replicate his breakout season and discuss how important his role is and some concerns about the Eagles heading into next year. Should we actually be worried? We'll talk about all of it and more. But welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB. We started off with our boy, Nick Sirianni, who turned 44 years old yesterday. Here is a list of all of his accomplishments. Be honest, when you kind of think about the career of Nick Sirianni so far, could you imagine this much success this early? I mean, it really is crazy what this guy has accomplished. There have not been many coaches in the game who have accomplished what he has in this short period of time. And it's just wild when you go back and think about the things that he has said, that he has been made fun of about. Even go back to his intro presser when he was stuttering left and right and people didn't like, the way that he presented himself and his mentality. Well, guess what? Now he can sit up on the throne. He can sit up on his high horse and say, look, I did all that. And now he's a Super Bowl champion. So looking forward to many more years of coaching here. I guess the question is, can he do it again next season? And to do that, he's going to need everybody to step up once again. Well, what if the Eagles go ahead and they add another defensive piece to this already stacked young roster? We talked about this guy multiple times this offseason, but thought this was pretty interesting as it pertains to Justin Simmons, who is currently still a free agent. He did the same thing last year, held out, waited, ended up getting a contract from the Atlanta Falcons, but he's been very vocal, right? He wants to reunite with Vic Fangio, be here in Philly, depending on how Andrew Makuba and Sidney Brown look. Eagles might have a need at the starting safety. So what if they go get the vet for very cheap, Justin Simmons, who had a decent year in Atlanta? And here is what they said over on SportsIllustrated.com. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN addressed Simmons' free agency and shared the Eagles are on, quote, a short list for the star safety while appearing on 97.5 The Fanatic. Quote, Simmons is interesting, I think, coming out of Atlanta. I do think he's looking for that big scheme. That's why the Eagles are on the short list there. It's Philly, it's Carolina, who has interest in Simmons. Ejiro Evero came from the Vic Fangio school, so I think that's where you should look for Simmons. And Evero's done a decent job. I mean, Carolina hasn't been that solid the last couple of seasons, really have been lacking talent, but he was a coordinator there. He was a coordinator in Denver. So obviously a lot of ties there. The question is, does Justin Simmons want to bank on maybe getting a little bit more and going to a team that's unproven, or does he want to try to go on a run and actually win a Super Bowl? So we've heard it all off season. I still think they should go out, bring in some more competition. If it doesn't work, it doesn't, but it doesn't hurt, right? Like bring another vet in who is familiar with Vic Fangio in this system. So I think it would be a good idea, and we'll see if it happens. We will see how it plays out the next month or two. But speaking of the guys that are on the team right now, and most importantly, a guy that I think needs to step up, Nolan Smith was predicted to be the X factor for the Eagles this season per PFF. They highlighted each X factor in the NFC East, and I want to talk about Nolan Smith, okay? Because Nolan Smith was absolutely incredible at the end of last year. I think people are going to look back on that 24 season and think about a lot of things. But without Nolan Smith, they do not win the Super Bowl. His emergence late, especially after BG's injury, changed everything. And for a guy that's just going into his third year in the league, the potential is sky high for Nolan Smith. And I want to bring up an article that was put out today from Dave Zangaro of NBC Sports Philly. He highlighted his biggest 5 concerns going into next season for the Eagles. So we're going to react to a couple here, but the main one that stuck out to me was not having enough pass rush. And he talks about Nolan Smith here. He says, on the edge, Nolan Smith had 10.5 sacks in the regular season and postseason and returns as the top edge rusher. It's a good thing he had a breakout year because Bryce Huff was a flop. You have Jalix Hunt, right, who's still a bit unproven, but played really well down the stretch. Then you bring in some of these patch-it-up guys, Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche. You draft Antoine Powell-Ryland. Is that enough, though? That's what I want to know from you down below in the comments. Is that enough? Because I'm not too concerned about the guys they have here. I think they can do a decent job, right? I think they can still provide production, but there is one area that I would extend on here that I'm a little worried about, and that's just having enough veteran experience, right? Howie's whole goal and mission is to extend the window, get younger, continue to get younger, and he's trying to do things opposite from what he did last time in 2018. But I still think you need those guys that have been around the game a long time, know the ins and outs, right? Can hold guys accountable. And not only do you lose Brandon Graham to retirement, who's a legend, you lose Josh Sweat, you lose Milton, who's been here for a couple years, you lose some pretty good pieces. So yes, they go out and they draft a couple great players. They draft Ty Robinson, who we think can be a steal. Jordan Davis has been here. Moro Ojimo played really good last year. Jalen Carter, but all these guys are still in their mid-20s or younger, right? So I still feel like you might need a little more veteran presence, and maybe that's how he's playing, to go out there and get one at the end of training camp or before the season, whatever it is. No matter what, Vic Fangio's system is going to limit some of the weaknesses of these players. Yes, they have to come back from injury, right? Nolan Smith and Jahad Campbell and Nakobe Dean, but you could even throw in other pieces. We saw that last year, and they're just going to have to play to the system. It's not about me, it's about we. So I do think that'll help a bit. And even Dave says here, like, the Eagles didn't even have that many sacks, 41, which was tied for 13th. They had the 28th pressure rate in the league at 31%. So when you lose these players, like, I'm not as concerned about, you know, the system and the fit, but to me, it's more about just having enough vets. And we saw that at another position as well, which was the safety, right? And we talked about that just a few minutes ago with Justin Simmons. You know, you bring in another vet who knows the game a little bit better. You lose CJ Gardner-Johnson as well. You lose Darius Slay. So you're losing a lot of experience that helped win that Super Bowl. And the offense is pretty much set. They're bringing everybody back. But on defense, Vic Fangio still has a big job to do. So I think those are the things that we should look out for. And the last thing is Saquon Barkley and his workload. Dave Zangaro listed all of the players who previously had 2,000 rushing yards and how they fared the next season. And the numbers really aren't that good. There was a lot of dip in production, probably for a lot of reasons, but I don't care. You know, I feel like Saquon is the anomaly. Everything this guy does, he's not human. He's from a different dimension. And the guy had, 400 total carries last year, around there. And he's saying he feels great. He feels like he's coming into his prime. He feels like he can do it again. Also, he probably had a better O-line than any of these other players. And if he stays healthy, I just feel like Saquon is going to do it again. Maybe it's just an inclination, but it's my gut feeling. I feel like Saquon can do it again, and I'm not really worried about a dip in production. The other big concern I have, last but not least, as Dave has here at number 1, is the offense not evolving, right? We all are scarred from the Brian Johnson experiment back in 2023. And Kevin Patullo, although he's been here, he's been in the building, you know, it's a similar situation with BJ. Like, you have to just be your own coordinator. You can't be too linked to Nick Sirianni. That's your right-hand man. You have to bring in new principles, continue to do the right things. I loved his answer a couple weeks ago about how he said, we're going to really try to expand on the things that work, not make it too crazy, too complicated, but also not do the exact same thing, right? Like, I'm not Nick Sirianni. I have my own offensive mind. We have a new QB's coach, so we're going to continue to bring in fresh philosophies and ideas. I think that's important, and we'll see if he can live up to the hype as a first-time coordinator. But until we get to the season, I just don't know how confident I'll be. I mean, I was pretty confident in Kellen Moore last year just because of his large body of work and his experience. But at the same time, there's always a risk. So maybe Kevin Patullo could be even better than Kellen Moore. We don't know. But you have to stick to what works and utilize your personnel the right way and not get too carried away like we saw a couple years ago. Lastly, this was put out by NFL on Prime Video. Which 2020 draft quarterback are you rocking with? Tua, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, or Jalen Hurts? I can't believe this is actually a question. I mean, are we serious here? I've seen some positional rankings over the last couple weeks, and Eagles aren't top 3 in wide receivers and corners and things like this. Are you kidding me? Do they want to just hate the Eagles? I mean, the Eagles have maybe the best position group in most of the positional groups in the NFL. If not at least like 4 or 5. And Jalen Hurts is by far better than any of these quarterbacks. Now they're trying to say he won because of the system and he had a super team around him. Look, I don't care, man. Jalen Hurts just has to show us his Super Bowl ring, his Super Bowl MVP trophy. That's all that matters. He got this team where they needed to go. Jalen has accomplished way more, both individually and for his team, and that's all that matters. Everybody else and all that noise can stay on the outside. Jalen knows what he needs to do, and he said he's continuing to work and continuing to improve. Jalen said he barely even took any time off after the Super Bowl because he wants to get back, and he doesn't want to let up at all. Love the guy's mentality, love his work ethic. And I think he is destined to do some more special things here in Philadelphia. So give me all your thoughts down below. How do you feel about all of this? What is your biggest concern for the Eagles heading into this next season? Give me all your thoughts down below. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.